3 true creepy babysitting horror stories. Welcome to DTC, Dark Timeless Creep, where chilling tales from the darkest corners of time will keep you up at night. Today, we dive into 3 terrifying babysitting horror stories that will haunt your thoughts. What starts as a simple task of looking after children quickly turns into something much darker, with eerie encounters and unexplainable events. Are you brave enough to hear them all? Get ready, because what you're about to hear will leave you questioning everything. Stay tuned for these spine-chilling tales that you'll never forget. Story 1: The Strange Woman at the School. It all began on a crisp autumn afternoon when Emily, a young mother, found herself in need of a reliable babysitter for her young daughter, Lily. Emily's job kept her busy, and she couldn't always rely on family for help. After some thought and research, she decided to post an ad online looking for a trustworthy sitter. Within a few days, Emily received a call from a young woman named Rachel. Rachel claimed she had experience babysitting and could take care of Lily in the afternoons when Emily wasn't home. Emily was relieved to hear from someone so quickly and decided to give Rachel a try. The first day Rachel arrived, Emily felt at ease. Rachel was friendly and approachable, and she took great care of Lily, which made Emily feel comfortable enough to go about her day without worrying. The day passed without incident, and Emily felt a sense of relief that she had found someone reliable. However, things started to feel strange one afternoon when Emily went to pick up Lily from school. As she walked to the school gates, she noticed a woman standing by the playground who seemed oddly familiar. At first, Emily couldn't place her, but as the woman approached, she smiled warmly and spoke. "How's Lily doing? I used to watch over her when she was younger." Emily was taken aback. She didn't recognize the woman, but she did know that she had never mentioned her daughter's name or her history to anyone at the school. The woman continued, speaking in detail about things that only Emily should have known, like how Lily liked to play with her stuffed animals after school, or how she preferred apple slices over oranges. Although unsettled, Emily nodded politely and tried to brush it off. She quickly ushered Lily away, eager to get home and out of the awkward conversation. When they arrived back at the house, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She recounted the encounter to her mother, who immediately looked concerned. "Don't you remember her? That woman used to babysit you when you were a little girl," her mother said with a worried frown. Emily was stunned. She didn't recall the woman at all, but her mother's words left her with a chilling sense of familiarity. Her mother continued, explaining that this woman had been persistent in trying to get close to their family in the past, but after several attempts to reject her, they had lost track of her. Even more unnerving was the idea that this woman somehow knew intimate details about Lily's life, things that Emily had never shared. Emily tried to calm her racing thoughts, but the encounter had left her deeply unsettled. That night, Emily made the decision to stop working with Rachel, though she hadn't done anything wrong. The unease she felt about the strange woman's words and her mother's warning pushed her to take action. It wasn't long after that Emily started asking around, and she learned that the woman had caused disturbances for other families in the neighborhood as well. Many described feeling watched or like their privacy was being invaded. It turned out that the woman had a history of trying to be involved in the lives of families, and when they refused her, she became more persistent. Although Emily had let Rachel go, the memory of the encounter with the strange woman lingered. The unsettling feeling stayed with her, and she found herself constantly on edge. One afternoon, Emily was standing in the kitchen when she heard the back door creak open. She was certain that she had locked it earlier, but there it was, ajar, as though someone had quietly opened it without her knowing. Panicked, she rushed to the door to check, but there was no sign of anyone. The feeling of being watched returned, stronger than ever. Emily couldn't shake the idea that the strange woman was still lurking around, perhaps watching her family from afar. The thought of someone invading her space without explanation left her feeling vulnerable and anxious. It became clear to Emily that she needed to trust her instincts to protect her family from anyone who seemed off or unfamiliar. In the end, the experience with the strange woman served as a harsh reminder. You can't always trust everyone, and sometimes your intuition can be the best defense against potential danger. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC Dark Timeless Creeps and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 2. The Haunting of Lily, the Babysitter's Nightmare. Lily, a young woman fresh out of college, was eager to earn some extra money for the summer. When a family living in a quiet suburban area hired her to babysit their 6-year-old son, Sam, she was happy to take the job. The house was nestled in a peaceful neighborhood, far from the hustle and bustle of city life, and the family had assured her that the job would be simple. Just look after Sam while they were away for a few days. The first day went by without incident. Lily and Sam played games, read stories, and spent time together. The house, though old, felt warm and cozy, and there was no reason for her to feel anything other than relaxed. But as evening descended, an odd feeling began to creep into her mind. The air seemed heavier, and a chill settled in the corners of the house. Something didn't feel right, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. As the clock struck 9 p.m., Sam, sitting on the couch with his toy, suddenly asked in a small, innocent voice, "Lily, why doesn't Grandma visit anymore?" Lily froze. The grandmother had passed away months before, and Lily hadn't been told anything about Sam speaking to her. "Grandma's not coming because she's gone now, Sam," she said gently, trying to reassure him. Sam, however, didn't seem to hear her. He continued staring into the living room mirror, murmuring to himself, "Grandma is standing behind you, Lily." Lily turned around quickly, expecting to see someone standing there, but the room was empty. "It's just your imagination, Sam," she said, forcing a smile, but her unease was growing. As the night went on, the house seemed to come alive with strange noises. At first it was subtle, the creaking of floorboards, the sound of something brushing against the walls. But soon, louder noises emerged, almost like footsteps moving upstairs. Lily wondered if it was just the house settling, but the sounds grew clearer. Something was definitely moving around up there. Reluctantly, she decided to investigate. "Sam, stay here. I'm going to check upstairs," she said, trying to stay calm. But Sam looked up at her with wide eyes, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Lily, Grandma says I'm not supposed to go up there." Lily's heart skipped a beat. There was something in Sam's tone, something unsettling. She tried to shake it off and climbed the creaky staircase, every step echoing in the eerie silence. As she reached the top of the stairs, a gust of cold air swept through the hallway. The windows were tightly shut, so the sudden chill made no sense. The doors were all closed, and the hallway seemed completely still. But then she saw it. At the end of the corridor, just past the shadow of the doorway, stood a figure, hazy, indistinct, and fleeting. It was a woman, but her features were obscured, as if covered by a mist or fog. The figure wasn't moving, but it felt as though it were staring directly at her. Lily ... The voice came from behind her, faint and whispering, but unmistakable. It was the voice of Sam. "Don't go any further. Grandma said you shouldn't." Frozen in place, Lily couldn't look away. Her heart pounded in her chest as the figure took a step closer, but just as quickly, she heard Sam's voice again, this time coming from the living room downstairs. "Lily, Lily, help!" Lily spun around and rushed back down the stairs, her pulse racing. But when she entered the room was empty. Sam was gone. Panic surged through her, and she ran outside to search the garden, but the darkness swallowed her every move. There was no sign of him. "Sam! Sam!" She called out into the night, but there was no answer. Then, as she turned back toward the house, she heard it, whispering, soft and eerie, coming from behind her. Sam is not Sam anymore. Lily turned around, and there, standing in the doorway, was Sam. But something was wrong. His eyes were black, hollow, like two empty pits. They held no emotion, no life, just an overwhelming void. His once bright face now looked like a lifeless mask, staring straight at Lily. She stepped back, her breath catching in her throat. "Sam, what's happening? What's wrong with your eyes?" She stammered, unable to comprehend what was happening. But Sam didn't speak. He just stood there staring at her with those unblinking eyes. Then, without warning, he collapsed onto the floor, his body twitching before going still. Lily was about to rush forward when she felt a cold hand grip her shoulder. Turning slowly, she came face to face with the figure of the elderly woman, the same one she had seen upstairs. It was Sam's grandmother, but her face was twisted and contorted, the features distorted as though they had been stretched or eroded by time. Her skin was paper thin, and her eyes glowed with a malicious, knowing light. "You've been deceived," the old woman's voice echoed, raspy and bitter. "That child is not Sam. He died years ago, and now you will take his place." Before Lily could react, the room went dark. She felt herself being pulled into the depths of the darkness, her body no longer in control. The house, the figure of Sam, the grandmother, everything seemed to dissolve into an endless abyss. Lily's last thought before everything went black was a chilling realization. She had been brought here, not as a babysitter, but as a victim of something much darker, something that had been waiting for her. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC Dark Timeless Creeps and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 3. The Night in the Haunted House. Hannah was a young woman who had recently moved to a small, quiet town, eager to begin a new chapter in her life. She had accepted a job as a nanny for the Wilson family, who lived in an old, isolated house on the outskirts of town. It was a place far removed from the city, surrounded by dense woods and untamed fields, with the occasional howling wind or distant rustle of wildlife breaking the silence. The Wilsons' home was a grand, sprawling mansion. Its age-old architecture made it a beautiful relic of the past. Despite its beauty, the house had an unsettling presence, as though it held many untold secrets behind its closed doors. The Wilsons were a kind and welcoming family. Mrs. Wilson was a gentle, kind-hearted woman who, along with her husband, hired Hannah to take care of their young son, Liam. Liam was a bright, inquisitive boy of 7, with wide, curious eyes and a smile that seemed to light up the room. Despite his cheerful demeanor during the day, he often seemed to be battling something darker at night. He would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, screaming about dark figures and strange noises he had heard in his dreams. His nightmares were always the same, horrible, vivid images that made his heart race with fear. Liam had been in therapy for a while, but nothing seemed to alleviate the nightmares that haunted him. The Wilsons hoped that a new, stable presence in the house might offer some comfort and ease the boys' troubled nights. Hannah, with her calm and nurturing nature, was seen as the perfect fit for the job. On her first night, everything seemed calm. Liam had seemed shy at first, but as they sat down for dinner, he slowly began to open up to her. The conversation at the table was light, with Mrs. Wilson chatting about the house, the town, and their family history. But as they ate, Liam grew more serious. He looked around the room as if to make sure no one else was listening before he spoke in a hushed, almost fearful tone. "This house has ghosts," Liam said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Grandma used to say she saw Grandma's ghost in the old bedroom, but Grandma died a long time ago." Hannah chuckled nervously, brushing off his comment as a child's imagination. "Oh, Liam, there's no such thing as ghosts," she said gently, trying to reassure him. "You're just imagining things." But as she spoke, a sense of unease crept into her mind. There was something about the way Liam spoke, the conviction in his words, that sent a shiver down her spine. Could there be any truth to what he said? She shook off the thought, telling herself it was just a child's fantasy, nothing more. That night, after Liam had gone to bed, Hannah began her usual evening routine. She tidied up, cleaned the dishes, and made sure everything in the house was in order. The Wilsons' home was vast and sprawling, and she felt a certain solitude in the quiet hallways as she moved from room to room. It was a silence that was almost too complete, as though the house itself was holding its breath. Sitting down in the living room, she settled into the plush armchair with a book. As the hours passed, the house seemed to grow colder, the shadows in the corners of the rooms stretching longer. Hannah found herself glancing up from her book as though someone or something was watching her from the dark corners of the room. She chalked it up to her imagination, but she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the air. Then she heard it. A faint noise, barely audible at first. It sounded like footsteps. She froze, her heart racing. The house was large and old, and she told herself it was probably just the floorboards creaking. But the sound grew louder, footsteps slow and deliberate, echoing from the upper floors. Hannah's stomach twisted with dread. She stood up and walked cautiously toward the staircase. The house was dark, with only the faint glow of the streetlights outside casting dim shadows on the walls. She stepped onto the stairs, feeling the creak beneath her feet, and began making her way up to the second floor. The sound of the footsteps was unmistakable now. They weren't just creaks, they were heavy, rhythmic, as though someone was walking slowly and deliberately just out of sight. She paused at the top of the stairs, the hallway ahead stretching out into darkness. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, as though the house itself was holding its breath. She took a deep breath and made her way down the hall, following the sound. It led her to the old bedroom at the end of the corridor, the room that Liam had mentioned, the one where his grandmother had supposedly seen the ghost. Hannah stood in front of the door, her hand resting on the doorknob. For a moment she hesitated. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as an icy chill swept through the air. Suddenly she heard a voice, soft, almost inaudible, but clear enough to send a jolt of terror through her. "Stay away from me," the voice whispered. Hannah's breath caught in her throat. She knew, without a doubt, that the voice hadn't come from Liam. It was deep, haunting, like a memory long buried but never forgotten. She tried to convince herself that it was just the wind, but the voice persisted, growing louder and more insistent. "Stay away," it repeated. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door, stepping into the room. The air was cold, colder than the rest of the house. The curtains fluttered slightly, as though a breeze had swept through them, but there was no open window. The room was dim, the only light coming from a small crack in the curtains. And then, as she stepped further in, something moved in the shadows. A figure, no, a hand, reached out from the darkness, long skeletal fingers extending toward her. Hannah gasped, stumbling backward. Her heart pounded in her chest as she turned and fled down the hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She reached the staircase and ran down, not daring to look back. Her pulse raced as she entered the living room, trying to calm herself. But then the most horrifying sight awaited her. Liam was standing there in the center of the room, but his eyes were no longer his own. They were dark, hollow, as though his soul had been drained from him. His expression was blank, vacant, as though he was no longer aware of who or where he was. "Liam," Hannah whispered, her voice shaky with fear. She reached out to him, but the boy remained silent, staring straight ahead. Then, in a slow, unnatural motion, he lifted his hands and pointed toward her, his fingers elongated and stiff. The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows in the corners shifting as if they were alive. "Liam, what's wrong?" Hannah asked, her voice desperate. "Talk to me, please." But Liam didn't respond. Instead, he slowly turned and began walking toward the darkness, his feet dragging across the floor. Hannah took a step forward, calling his name, but the boy didn't stop. He walked into the black void of the hallway, disappearing from view. Panic gripped Hannah as she ran after him, but the house seemed to change as she moved through it. Hallways she had passed before now seemed unfamiliar, twisting and turning in on themselves. The walls seemed to close in around her, the air growing thicker with each passing moment. When she reached the living room again, she was out of breath, her chest heaving in fear. But the sight that greeted her made her blood run cold. In the large mirror on the wall, a figure appeared. It was an old woman, her face contorted in grotesque lines of age, her eyes wide and unblinking. Her lips curled into a malicious grin as she stared directly at Hannah, her eyes never leaving her. "You can't leave, child," the voice rasped, the words chilling to the bone. "You'll never leave." Hannah stumbled back, her heart racing in her chest. She rushed toward the front door, desperately turning the doorknob, but the door wouldn't open. It was as though the house itself had locked her inside. Panic set in as she pulled at the door, but it wouldn't budge. She could hear the whispers now, faint but growing louder, surrounding her from all sides. "You're not going anywhere," the voice whispered. The shadows in the room shifted, swirling around her like a living entity. She felt cold fingers brush against her skin, a hand resting lightly on her shoulder. She spun around, but no one was there. The room seemed to close in around her, the walls shifting and narrowing until she felt as though she was suffocating. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything fell silent. The house was still, too still, but it wasn't empty. Hannah could feel it. Something was watching her from the shadows, waiting, patient. The whispers began again, softer this time, but unmistakable. "You will never leave," they said. "You are ours." And in that moment, Hannah understood. She had been trapped, not by the house, but by the ghosts of its past. She was no longer just the nanny. She was part of the house now, a part of its cursed history, doomed to wander its halls forever. As the darkness deepens and the stories grow more unsettling, we venture deeper into the unknown together. Each chilling tale brings us closer to the eerie truths lurking just beyond the veil of reality. The terror doesn't stop here, it only gets worse. Subscribe to DTC, Dark Timeless Creeps now, and stay on the edge of your seat. You won't want to miss what's lurking in the shadows next. Hit that notification bell and prepare for the next terrifying chapter. Remember, in the world of DTC, the creeps are always waiting, and they never rest. iMoon.